This is not my first time at Bethesda Presbyterian Church. A number of years ago, I was here to be in a conversation about how the Presbyterian Church was working to change its policies about ordination and marriage. And those policies were barriers to qualified, gifted, capable lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer folks who wanted to serve the church, whose faith was dear to their hearts and spirits. So many had grown up in the church, in a church like this, but suddenly, because of these oppositional policies, did not feel welcome and frankly did not feel safe. I'm really grateful that in 2011, which seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't, those barriers fell. And at that time, I pulled out a Human Rights Watch map, and I'm looking at all the countries around the world where, and this is the language, where homosexuality is criminalized, where the death penalty can be imposed, a threat and sometimes a sad reality for LGBT folk. And then I looked at the Presbyterian map, where all these Presbyterians, the largest Presbyterian church in the world is in Seoul, Korea. That's a conversation about colonization that we'll have another time. But what I was looking at was there are Presbyterians in over 100 countries, and in 90 of those, criminalization exists. In 10, the death penalty. And I thought, this is completely unacceptable, morally, spiritually, as a human being, as a citizen of the world, as a person of faith, as a Christian and a Presbyterian elder. And so, with the support of an amazing Presbyterian minister philanthropist, who is now okay that I can say who it was, Reverend Janet Edwards, sat with me and said, Michael, would you take what you've learned in the Presbyterian Church and the ecumenical movement and see if you can find partners to work with around the world? So indeed, in 2012, I began that work. It all became clear to me in an email from Juan in Colombia. And he said, our church has read about what happened in the Presbyterian Church USA, and they are not happy about it. And so some really hard conversations are happening in our church. And they want me out. They want me gone. Mr. Michael, I just want to know, does God love me? So it isn't always just about policies that restrict people's lives and take away their ministries. When I think about the anti-trans bills moving around the country now, the restrictions, the harm is done, but it's more than that. And so I can imagine Juan, and of course I wrote him back immediately. I said, of course God loves you. You know, God is not the church, you know, and the church is an imperfect, flawed institution, often striving to do its best. And it ought to be reflecting God's love, but it doesn't always do that in the same way that God does. Of course God loves you. And then I sent a bunch of materials and so forth. But I think now, to our opportunity, not just in the US, but around the world, to continue this work. So I want to say a word of thank you that echoes Ron's. We've had such a wonderful weekend with the Beyond Pink and Blue Trans Family and Spiritual Care Conference. Thank you to the Social Action Committee, thank you to the church staff, thank you to the session, for all who've been supportive, and for opening your hearts a little further to all of God's creation. Thank you.